thank you for inviting us to this virtual lit and fill event. So while we've all been going through what we've all been going through over the last however many years it's been now, I don't know. It just seems. Well, Ellen Phethean and I have been still carrying on in some fashion, trying to deliver creative writing workshops by email and by Zoom. I've just completed a Zoom course, and some of the writers who took part in that will read tonight, will share some of their work. Ellen will share something of hers at the end, and I will share something of mine now. So just to encourage you all to think ahead, in September, we are hoping that we will be able to come back in a face-to-face manner and be able to resume where we left off all those years ago, and that we will be able to begin creative writing sessions again for the autumn, probably early September, if that's permissible. So if any of you are interested in creative writing sessions and would like to do anything that either myself or Ellen are running, hopefully all running together jointly, hopefully in the Little Fill, that's something that you will be notified about as time goes by. So I'm going to read 3 poems of mine. They're connected in the sense that if a number of years ago I lived at the seaside. I lived in Tynemouth for a year in a cottage by the sea. And while I was there, I wrote a number of poems that I put together for an intended collection called Forbidden by the Sea. A clever play on Newbiggin by the Sea, I thought. Anyway, so because while I lived there, I noticed all these prohibitive signs that were displayed all along the seafront and all around the coast. And as we all know, a lot about prohibition now, but this was quite a while ago, a lot of official prohibited signs, and it just gave me the idea of writing a number of poems connected to the stay that I enjoyed in Tynemouth for 12 months, and with this title, Forbidden by the Sea, which will be published by the very excellent Dreek Poetry Mag. Well, it will be a full collection, probably coming out in a sort of pamphlet form in the summer. So I look forward to that coming out, and hopefully I'll be able to read from it in live time. So I'll read my 3 poems, and then I'll introduce the next poet from me, and then after that Ellen will introduce each person as they come up, and I think there are about 10 of us in total. So we're only going to read for about 5 minutes each, so don't worry, you're not going to be here all night. You'll be able to go to the pub. Oh, no, sorry.
No, you can't.
Right, so this first one's called Seaside. Let's go to the sea through the fret and the fog, find the shop on the front that sells Whitley Bay rock. Let's go to the sea full of pebbles and tots, stroll the pier and the prom, swallow picnics and wasps. Let's go to the sea in sandals and macs, buy ice creams and lollies and kiss me quick hats. Let's go to the sea, to the gulls and the bathers, see the sand and the waves and the bronze lifesavers. Let's go to the sea, to the rendezvous cafe, watch windswept dogs and precarious caps. Let's go to the sea and soak up the view, find a pitch on the beach, then stretch out and snooze. So just a sort of light rhyming poem to start off with. And the next 2 both concern Tynemouth Lighthouse. A couple of times a year before all this started up with lockdown and whatnot, a lot of you are probably aware that a couple of times a year we were allowed to go into interesting buildings and have conducted tours and learn a lot about the places we visited. And one of the places that I was lucky enough to go into was Tynemouth Lighthouse, and I learned a lot about it, and it was a really fascinating place to go and see. So the first one's called The Lantern Room Keepers. One man in the watchroom, one below, 12-hour shifts, sleeping while they can on rudimentary fold-down beds. Cut off when the sea is crazed, throwing itself at stone and rock, they gather up top, ride it out, attended by wraiths, howling and moaning in the wet wood grate, by wall tiles soaked with oil and surf. To land, sea walls lash, locked gates rattle. To sea, porpoises, seals, sharks, whales, voices from the deep and the shallows. Like every other lighthouse in the land, this has its own identifiable light and sound, so sailors can distinguish them and know. Lives depend upon the foghorn's blare, the turning glow, so those out there in ships and boats will never be let go. Ergo, the lighthouse men get on, tending, keeping lookout, concentrated on the sea, surveying keenly, eyeglass trained. Under the pier, waters seethe, saturate escape routes, squeal along the long extent of passageways. For those beset by the tunnel's black, a faint end light beckons toward land, draws the eye, keeps the focus, until at length faith is rewarded. Ghosts recede, the glimmer grows, becomes a moon big enough to believe. It's quite a moon theme that runs through a lot of the poems, as well as a few different threads, the sea obviously being one, and the moon being another one. So I will end my reading with another poem about Tynemouth Lighthouse, but this time it's written in the voice of one of the lighthouse keepers. Before the days of radar, by the way. Before the end of the lighthouse. It seems impossible now, this line of stone 2/3 of a mile long, jutting out into the wild North Sea. Only the best, the sturdiest materials were used, whiplashed along, stone by stone, brick by brick. Seas busy with life, weaving below, rising above. The two of us on 12-hour shifts, work to do and plenty of it, no idling about. Joshua kept lively with paperwork, making food for the two of us, mine winched up to where I kept Toot. A pair of binoculars, all we had to survey the calm and stormy seas. Watch to see if fox was hanging out. The local fox, who became our friend, followed us the pier's length, hoping for a crust, the shell of a hard-boiled egg. Starving, he ate anything we offered, licked butter from the rim of our tin plates, sat for hours on the pier wall. Fox was the town hobo, accompanied at times by a companion crow. Crow rubbed off on his notoriety, clever and crafty, two pals living off their wits, noses turned to the wind, the smell of fish. A bit like me and Josh, loving nothing better than a haddock's tail. And come September, if the weather didn't fail and the waters kept peace, we stripped off and soaked up the heat. Wily crow and canny fox, me and Josh, sun-drowsed, bestowed by Marion, a newly minted sovereign, 24 carats, and dropping through folds of inky sky. So thank you. That's me. Ellen, who was next on the list?
Yeah, it's Pam Gormally. Would you like to unmute and read something?
Thank you. Hello everyone. I'm Pam Gormally and I live in Annette near the Northumberland coast, and I started writing when we moved back north after retired from teaching in London. And the very first poem I ever wrote was in one of Ellen's classes for children writing for children. So Returning back to my roots gave me time to explore childhood memories, and the first poem I'd like to read was inspired by a workshop that was led by a wonderful poet, Colette Bryce, and it was based around disabilities. And one of the things she mentioned was that often a disability could be hidden and not seen on the surface. And when I was nearly 4, I was in Sheffield Children's Hospital for a childhood cancer, and I made a really good recovery, but the experience stayed with me. But it wasn't spoken of in the family at that time, and I was encouraged to forget and make a new life, which I did. And I didn't tell anyone until I was in my mid-30s, except for one doctor at university who saved my sanity and stopped me splitting in two. And this poem is called Ode to Invisible Disability. Let it speak for itself. You are a hidden scar, a dress yanked down, your mother's suppressed fury, don't tell. A frozen rabbit on a gurney, a disembodied voice from the next room, warning, lie still. A bead of scarlet blood pricked on child's thumb, smeared on a dark slide. You're the girl who left, sliding off the green couch, calling time to tiled waiting rooms, fluorescent lights, who waved to a weary doctor, scribbling jargon in a file. You're a young girl racing up a playing field, brandishing a hockey stick, shouting, over here. You are the effort of forgetting, shuttlecock by daylight, mountaineer in moonlight, climbing out of windows, wristbands scalding your skin. And that poem was published last autumn in a journal called Orbis, alongside this second poem I'll read, which is called Jounce. And really it's about finding an object that takes you back into another life. Jounce. Pared down, a grey amulet, locket-shaped, hides amongst a row of stones and shells thrown by the high spring tide. I hold it in my hand, thin layers hint, river ripples on the underside, glint warm to the touch, under a tang of brackish seaweed, the cold hit of the sea. Click open the hinge, a breeze from the west lifting me home to the Wascally Beck, the tumble of icy moorland water, carousing over the sill, slap of water on rock. 4 children balance on stepping stones, fish for minnows, calling to one another in high, persistent voices. My small hand curls around a flat pebble, tests it for weight and spin. One flick of the wrist, skimming the surface, it ricochets far out.
Thank you, Pam.
My last poem. Have I got time to read the last poem that I wrote here? Have I got time?
Yeah, you do.
Let's find it. I had it with me. Right. This poem is a sort of a work in progress, and it was written in this class just this term, and it was inspired by a workshop on hope and grace, and it's actually called Hope and Grace, and it was following a walk around Warkworth by the river. Hope and grace. Snow packed tight, ice crackles in the gutter. A sharp wind buffets you as you turn the corner from the river, but the gate is wedged open. You push back the heavy oak door, darkened with age, step inside the porch. Posters for Messy Church and help for mental health survivors line the walls, above bags packed with pasta, tea and tins for the food bank in the nearest city. The pews are cordoned off, the bookshop closed, voices silenced. You pull on your mask and walk past the stone carving of the knight in the corner. You perch on a red chair, cradle the wall, breathe in the musty smell of damp and age. The light shining in through stained glass windows slants onto the ring of candle holders, reminding you of the old church in the Dale, where your grandfather served as a warden, where your parents married just after the war. In the black and white photo, village children lined up to throw confetti, laughing and calling to each other. The village had a life then. You light a candle for your cousin, facing an operation in these constricted times. The flame burns and smoke curls from the wick like a breath into the high vault. You gather your thoughts like a Quaker in a grey dress. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And now I'd like to ask Joanna Stead to read.
Hello, everybody. I'm not going to read any poetry. I'm going to read some prose. So the piece I'm going to read is based on the theme of the language of Jean, and it's based on an exercise we did in the course quite recently. We were asked to consider 4 characters in a painting by William Roberts called The Dressmakers, also known as The Try-On, which was painted in around 1931. The image itself, I don't know if anyone can actually see that. Probably a bit tricky to see that. Just about. Anyway, we were asked to use a particular genre, romance, thriller, comedy, tragedy, dystopia, making a list of tropes and language associated with the genre. I did have to look up the meaning of trope, and in simple terms, it's the application of a name or descriptive term or phrase to an object or action to which it is imaginatively applicable, so not literally. So the image of the William Roberts painting reminded me of the characters of the work by Beryl Cook, who I'm sure probably you know. Lots of lovely, colourful images of rather chubby ladies having a nice time. So I decided to try writing something a bit comedy and romance, which I've never really done before. So this is about ladies enjoying themselves. And it's called Tilly's Tea Room. Good morning, ladies. Tilly welcomed the group of beautifully dressed ladies to her quaint tea room. They appeared dressed for business. You all look gorgeous today. Is it a special occasion? The ladies of a certain age grinned at each other, giggling amongst themselves. The ladies glanced at each other furtively, like young girls, mouths dipped in cherry red or fuchsia pink. Nothing special, Tilly. Just on the lookout as always, on the off chance a dreamboat might come our way. They glided over to the table in the window for a perfect view of the street. Handbags hung over slightly chubby arms. Brightly coloured floral fabric swished. Pleated skirts fanning over the edge of the velvet padded seats. Kitten heel shoes tapped on the oak parquet floor. What would you like today, ladies? Inquired Tilly. Beryl smiled at Tilly. Oh, a tall, dark, handsome stranger. On a plate, please, with a side of heavenly rich dark chocolate cake. Tilly grinned. Coming up, madam. And for you, Joni? Oh, I'd like a young fresh toy boy with a crumpet, covered in blackcurrant jam and lashings of frothy cream. Ruth ran her bejewelled fingers through her just coiffed blonde curls. Darling, I will have an egg mayonnaise sandwich, crusty on the outside, soft in the middle, with a dash of Marmite, dark, handsome, and very rich. Tilly tried to keep a straight face. She just loved these ladies. Every week there was a new adventure afoot. And for you, madame? Francine gazed up at Tilly, peering through her net veil, securely fastened to her hair with a diamond-studded clip. Today I feel inclined to enjoy a croque monsieur, s'il vous plaît, chérie, with a little hot spicy moutarde à la française on the side. Of course. And to drink, ladies? 4 Darjeelings, please, Tilly, as usual. The ladies turned their heads towards the window. Beryl pushed up her sleeve up her arm to reveal a beautiful gold Cartier lady's watch. 12:45 on the dot, punctual as ever. I wonder who he is. 4 slightly crinkled necks craned further to the window, looking longingly at the well-turned-out gentleman crossing the road towards the tea room. Hearts made a little jump, fluttering here and there. Contoured lips parted in anticipation. A little Botox smoothing elderly skin. Elegantly manicured fingers twisted amongst themselves as palms clasped each other. 4 ample bottoms shuffled on the velvet seat pads. 8 splendid bosoms quivered with excitement. "Oh my God, he's coming this way," cooed Beryl. "He is drop dead gorgeous. What do you think, ladies?" The little bell above the entrance door tinkled as Romeo stepped inside the tea room. Tilly ushered him to a quiet table at the other side of the room, away from the lusting eyes of the ladies. He quietly perused the menu and ordered a cup of Earl Grey tea with a toasted tea cake. He reached into the inside pocket of his tweed jacket and took out a well-worn notebook. He slipped the elastic from the cover and flipped the pages. The ladies were riveted, silent, perplexed. Who was this deliciously handsome man, and what was he doing in their little tea room? The ladies' hands twisted in nervous excitement. The sparkling diamonds, amethysts and emeralds on their fingers, glinting in the sun's rays, now peeping through the window panes. Romeo pushed his chair back, scraping the wooden legs on the parquet floor as he stood up. He momentarily studied his notebook and turned towards the 4 ladies. His highly polished black brogue shoes squeaked when he walked towards them. Beryl, always the leader in all matters, smiled her most glorious smile. "Would you like to join us?" Romeo smiled back and nodded in a gentlemanly way to the ladies. "Good afternoon, ladies. How kind of you to invite me." "Are you Francois Dubois?" he purred at the veiled lady. "Oh, no," she purred back. "I'm Beryl Dubois. Francine is my older sister." Francine glared at her. Romeo looked slowly around the table. "And you must be Ruth Kenny, I assume." Slowly turning to the smallest of the 4 ladies, he gazed into her hazel, smoky eyes. "And you must be Joni Stedman." "Yes, indeed," she stammered back, her breath completely taken away by his devastatingly good looks. The 4 ladies were for once stunned into silence. Their immaculate powdered faces, their elaborate floral blouses, their sweet, smiling smiles froze. The lips were silent as they stared at Romeo. Time stood still. Beryl Dubois, Francine Dubois, Ruth Kenny, and Joni Stedman. I'm arresting you on the suspicion of theft from Madame de Bovary's Jewellery Emporium on Friday the 13th of March, 2021. You do not have to say anything. 4 Crown Derby teacups crashed to the table, splattering Darjeeling all over the pristine lace tablecloth. 4 silver teaspoons fell to the floor with a clatter. 4 beautiful ladies, of a certain age, were taken away in a van. Romeo closed his notebook and pulled the elastic fastener over the cover. "Job done," he said to himself. Tilly ushered him to the door. "Tea and tea cake is on the house today, Fred." "See you tonight for dinner then." She winked at him. The end. Something a bit different, but a bit of fun.
Excellent. Okay, that's lovely. Can I ask Diane Granger, to unmute?
Right, I've got 2 poems to read. And the first one is about a man called Cliffy Gray who had a travelling shop in Hartlepool when I was young. It's called What Cliffy Said. He drove in most days from down the long straight road, his van a speck that grew in mass, until he'd hear the slowing crunch of tyres, the snort of brakes, and watch the green back door slide up, releasing that familiar scent of sherbet and cosmic dust. And here's inside a cram of shelves and boxes bristling with bananas, oxos, custard, firewood, clothes pegs, beans, any sort of thing your mother might have missed when she did main messages, all packed so close you'd take a month to clock them all, then want to start again. His scale would rise and fall to cost the tumbling spuds and fruit, each item's price marked on a pad, then reckoned by a short blunt, scraping pencil. A picture house of hues and sounds, not even partly dimmed by Cliffy's habitual gruff mood. He'd be in shirt sleeves, at most a fawn cardigan for coldest days, brow perpetually harassed, as though it asked what rascally urge had made him drop his proper job with perks and set out for the road. Just now and then, his eyes, pure Viking blue that didn't match his face, would scan our disappointing queue, as if for cowboys, rangers, wagoners, who'd cook their game on prairie fires, from children's tales he couldn't quite forget. The next one could be called a sort of love story, depending on how you've been brought up. It's called Jerry Stella. After his evening at the engineers, Jerry was merry. His wife was glum to think she'd turned down the nice young bloke from the Duke for this specimen, flat out in an armchair, tab's length of ash dripping from 2 brown digits, chin drooling dribbles suggestive of other fluids, green, raw-coloured, tan, only just hidden beneath that blubbery skin. If she ran off with her milk and honey complexion, her strawberry crushed lips, happy, smelling of bluebells, would he cry? She dreamed of draining him dry, returning him to the off-licence for the threepence. Thank you. That's the end of mine.
That was lovely. Thank you, Diane. Okay, can I ask Annette now to unmute and read? Thank you.
My piece is from an exercise that we did yesterday in Kathleen and Ellen's workshop. And it's about the TV documentary programme that was entitled 7 Up. And it was about a group of children that they interviewed every 7 years as a social experiment. So this is my musings of a 7-year-old child that I used to know in 1969, aka me. One Sunday morning, Christine called on me and asked if I would like to go to Sunday school with her. I asked Mummy if she would take me, but she said she belonged to another church, but she'd have a word with Daddy. I could hear them talking in the kitchen, and Daddy said, "Let her go if she wants to. Christine will look after her." Mummy didn't have a happy face. I think Daddy lets me do things Mummy doesn't want me to do. In church we sing All Things Bright and Beautiful, and when Sunday school is finished, the vicar gives me a postcard with a picture of Jesus in Jerusalem. I gave it to Mummy when I eventually get home. Me and Christine walk through the park after church, but I don't tell. I would be in trouble if I scraped my Sunday best shoes. Christine takes me to the Sunday school Christmas party too. I love my pink sparkly dress that Mummy made and my shiny shoes and lacy tights. I play with the children from my church, not the ones I don't know. I like Karen best. She has long plaits and her hair is very dark and curly, and it never falls out of her red ribbons. I wish I had plaits like Karen. I don't like the boys because they're noisy and run around and kick the balloons and burst them. We made a big circle for the hokey-cokey, and then the boys charge through it, break it up, and squeeze in beside me, and I have to hold one of the boys' hands. Horrible. My favourite party games are statues and pass the parcel, and I like dancing the twist. After games, we have tea. I don't like the jelly because it has fruity bits in it. The pink icing cake is best. Sometimes on a Thursday, we go to the big shops in town. Mummy buys lots of material and lace and threads and glittery buttons. She says she can't get what she wants in our little shops. We live on the top of a hill with big fields and a park to play in. When it's dark, You can see right across to the city with all the flickering lights and twinkling stars in the black sky. When Daddy works away, Mummy lets me sleep with her in the big bed. When he comes home in the school holidays, Daddy takes us to the seaside in the car. We sing 10 Green Bottles and One Man Went to Mow to stop me feeling travel sick. We stay in a huge old house with a staircase that goes up one side and a staircase that comes down the other side. And there's chickens and pigs in the garden. Daddy builds sandcastles and we play cricket and tennis. He holds my hand very tight and we run so fast when we fly the kite. Mummy goes to school in the night time and there's lots of books and sewing all over the house. She makes dresses for people getting married. Sometimes she asks me to stand still and pins pieces of material onto me when she makes bridesmaids' dresses. I've never been a bridesmaid. Sometimes the pins scratch and hurt, but I still want to be a bridesmaid more than anything in the whole wide world.
Thank you, Annette. That was lovely. Now, John, do you want to unmute and also reveal yourself, or will you read blind, so to speak?
Maybe I should read blind if I can.
Oh, there you are. Good.
Okay, I'm going to read a few very short pieces, all of which were done in excellent workshops run by Ellen and Kathleen over the last few weeks. I'm really fond of jokes and dark humor. So a lot of these pieces have got punchlines of a sort. Right, this one's called When Your Name Is Called. It's an unknown number. I decide to answer anyway. Hello, is that Mr. Adams? Yes. Do you mind if I call you Frank? I hesitate for a moment, then say, sure, no problem. It's Dr. McCarthy about your test results. Bad news, I'm afraid. Oh, indeed. Sorry, would you like me to be honest with you? Well, yes, if I'm frank, you may as well be. Stage 4 cancer is indicated. We'd like to do further tests, but it's not good. Stage 4? How many stages are there? 4. Just 4. Oh. Hello? Frank, are you still there? Yeah, still here. But now I'm wondering for how long? How long? Yeah, how long would you say I've got? Ah, well, that depends. On what? Further tests, a biopsy, and you're not cheering me up, doctor. Yes, well, I'm sorry about that. Days, weeks, months? We'd like you to come in right away. Oh, right. But I should point out that my name's not Frank. It's John. Ah. Okay, that's the first one. Second one is called Culverted. For a long time, I'd thought about homelessness and what it means to be that way. Then suddenly it happened to me and I found out. At first, each morning I would energetically use what I suppose were my charms to beg on the city street. Some days it was hard and on others surprisingly easy. It depended on the weather, I decided. At 2 p.m. I would stop my work, buy a little food and as much drink as I had money for. Then I would walk for hours, always ending up on a bench where I knew would be Jude and Leek. Jude the Geordie had been on the streets for years and it showed. Leek was seasoned too, a traveller who drifted into town and decided he liked it. He was the only Welshman I knew. I liked them both, smart and funny, honest too, as much as it's possible for a homeless to be. It was going on late spring, but the nights were still cold, so Leek suggested we adjourn to a culvert he'd found. So we went with our booze stash, picking up dead branches picking up what dead branches we could on the way. Leek had already amassed a bunch of logs there, so tonight would be warmish. The fire lit, we continued to drink as the outside night closed in. The ritual was familiar. Poor jokes, complaints of arthritic pains, blurry stories from the past, and so on. Down the line, we got onto party tricks. Jude had a number of ones that were most unsavory, as I recall. Then the leek cleared his throat and began reciting Under Milkwood in the kind of way only a Welshman could. I forget the exact words now, but he began at the beginning. As he went on, Jude got up and began to dance. She was going on mortal, but her balance somehow was perfect. The heat and flames threw up shadows on the concrete. I was drunk, and her amazing movement was the most beautiful, hypnotic thing that I'd seen. I studied ballet, she said. Leek said, look. At the mouth of the culvert against the blue-black sky, there was a bright, full moon. Okay, next one. It's called Walking the Dog. It's 7:30 in the morning, just like every morning, and he's walking the dog just like every morning. His mind emptyish, jellyfish, barely awake, just enough to keep an eye on the dog. He carries an umbrella just in case. His last dog died in its 14th year. He worked out that in this time he'd walked 10,000 miles with the animal and missed him so badly he got another one. The first dog was called Woody, and this one named Steely Dan. That seemed appropriate. In the trees now, a path he'd traced countless times. He used to head for the river where Woody would swim pointlessly, retrieving sticks. But he avoids that route now. Steely Dan moves ahead, nose close to the ground as always, sniffing out who knows what. He read once that a canine sense of smell is around 50,000 times that of a human, so he could never understand why they always seek out each other's backside. This perhaps is one of those facts of life. Waking up a little now and thinking about whatever men think about. It begins to rain. He doesn't mind for himself, given the little hair that he has left, but he's worried about the dog, calls it back to the shelter of his now unfurled umbrella. Good boy, Steely, he says, good boy. Eventually, they take the steep slope back. The dog is amazingly fast, leaving him panting to keep up. Then they arrive at home, enter the house, and he crouches to inspect the new pet. Everything seems fine, but he throws a towel over the damp fur anyway. Lie down, he says. Steely Dan lies down. Training him was pretty easy, he thinks. Then he makes a cup of tea, takes it up to his wife as he always does. She sits up yawning, tilts her head and says, I thought the whole point of getting a robot dog was that we didn't have to walk it. Next one's called Purgatory. So then he died. Sometime after, it may have been seconds, minutes, or days, who knows. He appears on the escalator. He's walking up while the escalator's moving down at exactly the same rate. So actually, he's not going anywhere. He hears the observes bathed in blue-white light. He imagines there must be a source somewhere above, but he cannot see it. Rather theatrical and ghostly, he thinks. The escalator stretches up and disappears into an unknown blackness. He looks behind to see it extends down into another black hole, longer than the Angel Islington then. He tries increasing his pace, but the escalator does also. So hurrying is pointless, back to walking pace. Is he a ghost? Perhaps, but a solid ghost, not one of those wispy apparitions that are in those horror films. And he has ghost thirst, that raging dryness that all ghosts have. Lucky then that coming towards him down the escalator is a bottle of water and a pork pie. Some years back, before his death that is, he began to take the vegan route, so he won't be eating that pie. Imagine that, a vegan murderer. but he does scoop up the bottle and downs the water before placing it back to disappear behind him. It's been a while now and he's thinking about time, a little futile because time no longer exists. That is, there is no future and no past. All time is present time. However, he can reflect on his life because it's all there, right in front of him. So he watches his life in this eternal present. It's a bad life, full of danger, excitement, malevolent acts, and poor choices. After experiencing that life for a second time, he does wish now that it would have all been different. It's too late, of course. He wishes he could apologize, beg forgiveness, but there's no one to accept an apology or forgive him. So he walks and drinks water from the bottles as they appear. He'd been counting the pies as they rolled past, his way of marking time. But he stopped at around 10,000 pies and realized that he may have been walking for years, if there were years. By now, having examined and re-examined his life for more than 1,000 times, the only feelings are of regret, shame, and crushing boredom. The tears flow as they always do in these cases, which explains the ghost thirst, perhaps. Then the escalator stops. And finally, as Ellen knows, I'm no poet, but this is this is an attempt at one. Pins and needles, keys for past, lost doors, dried up blue tack, useless glue, a Dyson pretendy keyring rabbit paws, forgotten plugs and blown fuses, many things, potential users, paper clips for many paper, money clip for missing dollar, fridge magnets and sellotape, lots of useful, useless things they hope, and barren bits of string. I am the container, the kitchen drawer of many things. That's it, thanks.
Thank you, John. That was great. And can I now ask Alex Corrin-Tashibana to read? Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you Ellen and Kathy for allowing me to be here. It's really nice to see a few familiar faces. I'm going to read two poems, and the first one is in part inspired by Langley, by his poem To a Nightingale. To G, after R.F. Langley. Nothing along the road but poems, maybe. Behind me, a robin watches from the end of a branch, as if about to dive. I search for something to write on. Only my hand. I look up, he's gone. Solitary berry on tree. I could call it russet, mahogany, perhaps. Dogs right up to my knees, unafraid to get close. Wandering into nettles, brambles, and roe deer, 3 of them, starting, barking into trees. Rosa moschetta, bright as lipstick, red peppery, pressed in my hand. Blackberries, withered and grey. Rambling the brambled path, pen in one hand, prickly hedgehoggy treasure in the other. Thistles teased from scratchy scenery. I could call them fuscus, dried up. They stick to my coat. I carry a branch for the hearth. And why do I tell you all this? Not because I love you or anything, just for the gift gaff. Thank you. Yeah, I was really pleased because that one was recently longlisted for the Acumen Prize. The second poem is slightly different tone, but I won't say any more than that. This is a confessional poem after Catherine Maris. I am guilty as I watch you on the screen of homing in on your higgledy-piggledy teeth with gaps you could park a lorry between. And as you talk of your go braless, radical feminist daughters, I think that won't do their boobs any good. And think of Wendy Pratt's line about jogging, sweating under each swinging tit. And I wonder if I'll keep it up, couch to 5K. And try as I may, I can't help but say that their crusade against the patriarchy is undermined by the fact you pay the rent. After 30 years of teaching, my dad says you can tell a lot from a person's handwriting. Mine is straightforward, honest. Sometimes I am too honest. Like that time I bumped into my science teacher, Mr. Hull, on his bicycle and asked him what was wrong with his legs. He said it was age, varicose veins. And now, looking at you as you lean in on WhatsApp, I pretend not to notice the age gap, but flash back to my school copy of W.H. Auden, his face looming from the cover like a tortoise. I tell myself lines are characterful, dissipate in the evening light. I don't want to fight. So I try to forget your estranged wife, your 34-year history. And when you say I'm cruel, Cruella de Vil and her 101 Dalmatians come to mind. And I consider how I love a leg of lamb, but you're vegan and won't even eat honey. And I think how, when I'm in my fleece, you say I look honey bearish. And although this is no teddy bear's picnic, I crave the handmade in Dorset Belgian chocolate willies that lie stashed away between my knickers. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That's great. Okay. And now can I ask Diana to unmute and read? Thank you.
Hello, I've got two quite short pieces that came out of the workshops in this last session. They're sort of thematically linked, but the first one is set a year ago. So the first one's a bit of prose, and I've called it Road. In the early twilights, she would leave the house, go down to the nearby road, and walk along it to enjoy the views over the valley. If she met someone, she put her head down, filled with strange uneasiness about being outside. Those first days when the world had been paused and the sun blazed down with unseasonal heat. Blossom burst on the trees and daffodils jigged in sublime indifference. The birds sang ever loudly. Cars lay in their driveways like sunbathers catching the last rays, their batteries slowly dying as the tires softly exhaled. The road, usual umbilical between the suburb and the city, was now wide and empty and perfect for games. She saw her mum as a child living on this street all those years ago, playing rounders and hopscotch. She saw herself in the friendly grip of her grandfather as he raised his stick to stop the traffic, which was now industrial, with huge lorries pounding and rumbling up and down from the steelworks. This strangest of springs, she fancied that the road was also in shock. Almost overnight, the roar stopped and dust gathered in the gutters. For the first time in her life, she could cross it without looking. So that was sort of set a year ago. This one is set. This came out of the same workshop that Pam mentioned earlier on Hope and Grace, and it's set more recently, and it's just called Grace. I'm on a bench smeared with sunlight, empty trees at my back, rattle their fingers and look over me, through me, past me. I look left and look right for the runners, the cyclists, the strollers who will break this small spell in this dappled green thoroughfare. A pair of kites patrol the sky. The restless air fidgets around me. A bird sings a few notes to underline this moment of grace. I am thinking of nothing at all. I will soon be gone.
Great, thank you, Diane. Okay, that just leaves me to read 3 short poems and then the night is over. And this first poem is called When We Drank from Streams. When we drank from streams and ate with our fingers, wrapping food in leaves, we had no need of washing up. My mother showed me how spoons could be scoured with clods of earth, wiped on the grass, dipped in pools. You and I had a red plastic bowl, a drying rack balanced with glass, pans and dangerous knives. I needed rubber gloves to protect my skin. Your brother had a modern kitchen, a dishwasher he loaded in a particular way, cleaning the crocks before he put them in. You didn't want one, liking your fingers in a warm place in our drafty house. You said it gave you space to think in the domestic chaos. Then you were gone, and I had to do it all. I was angry, but not with the dishwasher. Now I recycle the same cup and plate, eat with my fingers, drink straight from the tap. This is very new, came out of one of our workshops that we've just done, and it's called Not a Flaneur, because we're all walking now everywhere, and of course flaneur is a rather swish name for a stroller in France, but we're not flaneurs. I slammed the door on Zoom, on lockdown, left my room, marched my bad mood down the road. Grey clouds like Deliveroo backpacks spat rain on Armstrong Park. I saw a million dogs pulling owners clutching gifts of shit. I saw young boys kill the grass by kicking balls. Men in lycra burst through pedestrians, their bikes fight for space with buggies like it was the Tour de France. I saw shoes hung for their crime of walking, trees too bare to hide their secrets, flung masks of blue flowered in lieu of blossom. The coffee cart coughed up a spaced out queue. Footpaths shape our routes and tell us where to go, like nightly briefings, rules and regs. And like my brain, I travelled miles, nowhere and back again. The prison yard of Heaton gave me no relief. I crossed the bridge and saw how full and brown the Ousburn raged. And then I heard, "How are you?" It stopped me in my tracks. "Oh, you know." My friend held out a hand, but didn't touch. I know, she said. Me too. And inside, a little window opened, and I saw through. And my last one, some of you might remember this event, it's called Arrival. It had to be just right. The weather, wind, and water, waiting for the day, the river, mirroring the cloudless sky, stood still. The tide was on the turn, riding up from Jarrow Slakes to Wylam, when the giant hove into view, taller than the Tyne, golden yellow against the blue, riveting in autumn light. Not a breath to tilt or sway the floating sheer-leg crane, like Nureyev and Fontaine. Elegant, the Asian Hercules lifted, hovered, swung and lowered the blinking eye into its slot with millimetre precision. The crowd was silent till that drop. Then how we cheered as old lads felt the tug, the thrill. clapped the hands that helped to build that moment. Thank you. I'd just like to say a few words of thanks. Thank you to all our readers and all on the course via email or Zoom. Thank you so much. Thank you to Kay and Eason and the Littonville Library for hosting the event. Thanks to my lodger Jasmine, who helped me with the Zoom and all the tech stuff. And to all of you who logged in tonight to watch us as viewers. Happy Easter, and hopefully next time we meet, it'll be face to face. Good night.